Hypercalcemia is one form of endocrine emergency which is relatively rare, but it is often associated with long-term complications and often missed because of the lack of overall awareness in that regard. So what we'll do is that we'll be focusing about the different aspects of hypercalcemia, and that would basically include cases related to hyperparathyroidism, which were confused with vitamin deficiency, and vice versa, pituitary parathyroid adenoma, possibility of carcinoma, then non-PTH dependent causes. So all we'll discuss in that perspective, and we'll be joined by our colleagues in that regards. Now, all of you can go and have a look at our MediClasses Pediatric Endocrinology website, learning.growthsociety.in, which has got a lot of information about these aspects, as well as various courses which are available there. And we have recently launched our book, Advances in Pediatric Endocrinology. Three major investigations which will really give you a diagnosis, and we'll focus on these predominantly. I would say the most important, of course, is the phosphorus. Everybody who has hypercalcemia should have a high phosphorus. I'm talking in the same way when I say hypocalcemia should have a low phosphorus. Similarly, hypercalcemia should have a high phosphorus except if there is a PTH problem. So if you have a calcium sensing receptor defect, hyperparathyroidism, or Jansen's disease, these are the increased PTH effect, phosphorus will be low. Everywhere else it will be high. So phosphorus becomes important in that regards. The second, of course, is PTH. Everybody who has hyperparathyroidism should have a high PTH, while others will have a low PTH. Now, what is important to understand is that what do you mean by a high PTH in hypercalcemia, Dr. Pratik?
Any PTH more than level of 20 at the time of hypercalcemia is hyperparathyroidism.
So we need to understand that the PTH should theoretically be low. It should be 0 in the setting of hypercalcemia. But if your PTH is more than 20, you should start thinking that this is hyperparathyroidism. This is an important concept to understand. So phosphorus, PTH, and the third, of course, is urinary calcium. Everybody with hypercalcemia should have hypercalciuria, because if you have more in blood, more in urine. The only condition would be a calcium sensing receptor defect, and second, Naveen, thiazide diuretics, because they will cause falsely hypercalciuria, and that's why we'll talk about how urinary calcium become important to evaluate in that regards. So if you just look at phosphorus, PTH, and urinary calcium, your diagnosis is done. Vitamin D, of course, if you have a history, you can think of vitamin D, and calcitriol, if you're talking about the setting in which you have a vitamin D dependent cause, you have got a high phosphorus, but your 25 OHD is not high. Then you do calcitriol in that setting, and PTH is 0. So mainly these first three, phosphorus, PTH, and urinary calcium, will give you the diagnosis in most cases. That's what is most important. So now, as we discussed, there is a log linear relationship between calcium and PTH. As the calcium goes up, PTH goes down. So anybody who has got hypercalcemia with a PTH more than 20 is hyperparathyroidism. Less than 20 is PTH independent. But this is not absolute. You have to look at other picture as well. But this concept is important. So as for hyperinsulinism, any detectable insulin during hypoglycemia is significant. Any detectable PTH or PTH more than 20 is significant in hypercalcemia. Don't say, okay, PTH is 40, it cannot be hyperparathyroidism. No, that's not true. More than 20 is significant, and this is an important concept which has to be looked into in that regards. So now, before we go into cases, just to summarize, look at the PTH level. If the PTH level is below 20, we are talking about a PTH independent cause in that setting, then most likely vitamin D. So look at vitamin D. If it is high, it is vitamin D toxicity. If the vitamin D is normal, look at calcitriol. If the calcitriol is high, it means that there is something going wrong which is causing more production. Is it fatty necrosis? Is it sarcoidosis? We'll discuss about that. If that is also normal, then you're talking about some immobilization, hypophosphatasia, all those lytic lesions, they will become important, and then clinical picture will guide you. If your PTH is above 20, then you're dealing with hyperparathyroidism or a calcium sensing receptor defect. Now, hyperparathyroidism, the PTH will be very high, but sometimes it is difficult. So then you look at a fractional excretion of calcium. If the fractional excretion of calcium is more than 2%, this is clearly hyperparathyroidism. If it is 1 to 2%, it may be falsely low because of sign.
Vitamin D deficiency and one more thing, thiazide diet.
So you look at vitamin D level. If vitamin D is normal, then you think of hyperparathyroidism. If vitamin D is low, you give a trial of calcium and vitamin D and see whether it increases. If it is increasing, you go more in favor of a hyperparathyroidism. If it is less than 1%, it is usually a calcium sensing receptor defect. But again, if vitamin D is normal, then that is confirmed. If vitamin D is low, it can still be a masked hyperparathyroidism. So what I'm trying to say is that the most important investigation is PTH. PTH low, vitamin D related, do 25 OHD and calcitriol. PTH high, look at urinary calcium. And based upon that and fractional excretion of calcium will decide whether it is a calcium sensing receptor defect versus a primary hyperparathyroidism. Management is absolutely different. For primary hyperparathyroidism, you have to do surgery. For hypocalciuria or in the form of a benign hypercalcemia, you don't need to do surgery. It is not going to cure in that perspective. Remember that vitamin D deficiency can play spoil sport and that can cause confusion in that setting.
It was an 18-year-old boy with history of renal stones since the past 10 years. So this is what we have till now. But more importantly, he didn't have any polyuria, no polydipsia, no irritability. In the sense, he didn't have any symptoms of hypercalcemia. Second question comes into mind whether this is FSH or not. So there was no family history of any renal stones. Now, if we've ruled out FSH, let's look into other causes of maybe hyperparathyroidism or not. So no episodic spells of dizziness, palpitations, neck swelling, considering any pheochromocytoma or any thyroid carcinoma. No history of visual disturbances or loss of consciousness, considering any pituitary adenomas. No history of chronic use of PPIs, considering an gastrinoma, hypoglycemic episode, considering insulinoma, or any incriminating drugs such as lithium, etc. were used.
So when you're talking about recurrent renal calcification, you're mainly focused on hypercalcemic causes. What are the normocalcemic causes that you have to think about?
Other things, whether we can, first of all, we can think urea stones, any other causes of stones,
and
any furosemide diuretic, furosemide also can
RTA
or RTA.
So RTA will be an important consideration in somebody who has an early onset renal calcification. So you have to ask. You asked about polyuria,
yes,
but more of bony deformity will become very, very important in that setting. So of course we know that this is hypercalcemia. That's why we are more focused.
Yes.
But you have to also think of RTA as a major possibility in this setting.
So his initial workup showed that calcium was normal. Phosphorus was low normal at 3.79. For ALP was just 117. What is marked here is the PTH that was 167.7. Creatinine uric acid was normal. And an important pointer here that he was vitamin D deficient at just 5.97. Urine calcium creatinine ratio was also 0.17 and DEXA wrote osteopenia rather than any osteoporosis.
So just hold on there. So this report, we have a child who has nephrocalcinosis. Now renal calcification.
Yes.
Along with that, the major thing is that you have hypocalciuria. So is it biologically plausible to have hypocalciuria with renal calcification?
Yes, sir. It might be a recent onset in drugs he started, or what I will explain whether for any cause the calcium has come down, which is
so. It is very, very interesting to remember is that probably this report is not a true reflection of his calcium status. What I've said is that his PTH is high. So what will this PTH do to urinary calcium?
It will conserve.
It will conserve. So this hypocalciuria at 9.34, if you had hypoparathyroidism, there will be hypercalciuria. So this PTH is actually helping it out. So something new might have happened, which is dropped his serum calcium and dropped his urinary calcium and increases PTH. Now what can that be, Navi? Something which causes masking of hypercalcemia, masking of hypercalciuria, and rise in PTH level.
Vitamin D deficiency.
Which is a very, very obvious cause. So whenever you are doing a PTH, always do a vitamin D.
So looking at this report, we have three differentials. Is he a primary hyperparathyroidism? Points towards it is say, okay, we have a high PTH, but then his calcium is normal. He has low urine calcium creat ratio. He's just mildly osteopenic. is it a vitamin D deficiency and nothing else? It could be because his calcium is normal, his PTH is high, vitamin D is low. Or is it FHH? Because he has high PTH, he has a low urinary calcium creat ratio. So the best point of
Why is it not FHH right away?
family history is not the same. And
why will he have stone?
Calcium is normal.
No. Why will he
Urine
have
calcium
stone?
creat is normal, sir.
So
It's low.
no. If you have FHH, will you have renal
You will not
calcium?
have. That is
You
one.
cannot have because you don't have hypercalciuria. So the third diagnosis is out right away. So, and the third I would say is this is hyperparathyroidism, which is masked by vitamin D deficiency. That will be an important consideration, which is the most likely possibility in this setting. Carry on.
So the next best step is to give a trial of cholecalciferol, which was given 800 international units per day. And the reports, as we saw, calcium remained the same, that is 9.9, but not going to hypercalcemia. PTH came down to 87.90, which is not entirely normal, it is still high. ALP is normal. Vitamin D, apologies, it's not 5.96, it increased to 30, which is normal levels. And calcium creat ratio only increased marginally to 0.23.
So why did you use a smaller dose of 800 rather than what is the therapeutic dose in this age group?
So here to around 3,000 to 6,000 units per day we have to give, sir. But we need to see the change, whether it should not go into hyperparathyroidism in this.
So when you are doing this therapeutic trial of vitamin D, do not give a high dose. If suppose he is hyperparathyroid, you will have a huge hypercalcemia which will happen. So what is happening here is there subtle changes, but what you've seen is that PTH has come down. And your calcium has increased, it is touching towards the hypercalcemic range, towards the hypercalciuric range. So maybe there is a smoldering hyperparathyroidism, but it is not a very severe one, which is there.
So based on these, I put my diagnosis as initially a vitamin D deficiency because one, he's not really reached the hypercalcemic stage, or it has not, PTH has come down relatively more than before, but we cannot still rule out hyperparathyroidism. We need to observe this child more, this person more, and look for serial calcium and urine calcium creat ratio. The next step will be monitoring of these PTH levels, and if persistently high, we should go in for a system EV scan and look for adenoma or other things. So there are various reports of this vitamin D deficiency masking primary hyperparathyroidism. The first was a 45-year-old male who was incidentally detected with some loser zone in his bone. And then he was given a trial of vitamin D and ultimately led to hypercalcemia. And the other one was this lady who had just given vitamin D supplementation and nothing else. And then she developed hypercalcemia and hyperparathyroidism. What is most important in this, both these cases went on to have hypercalcemia, which was missing in our case. Maybe he would develop it later after following follow-ups. A systematic review was done of all vitamin D deficiency masking primary hyperparathyroidism. And per se, what they have said, they don't have enough data, but till now, what they say is lower vitamin D exacerbates the biochemical severity and disease presentation of primary hyperparathyroidism. Low vitamin D and accompanying high PTH may worsen bone mineral density as well. And finally, they say, until more prospective data is available, moderate doses such as less than 2800 IU per day, which we give 800 IU per day, it seems prudent to use that with frequent monitoring of serum and urinary calcium to see how they respond to it.
So I think this is a very, very important case which highlights the limitations in terms of assessment in that regards. Two things which were unusual in this case were the PTH level. Now, when we discuss usually in hyperparathyroidism primary, the PTH is not very high. It's not above 100 in most cases, but if you have vitamin D deficiency, it can go up. So what really is hyperparathyroidism? You need to have hypercalcemia with hypophosphatemia. This is there. Along with, you need to have a PTH more than 20. This is what we've discussed. But very importantly, three conditions have to be ruled out. You have to rule out renal failure, vitamin D deficiency, and hypophosphatemic rickets or RTA, depending upon the clinical situation that you're dealing with. But vitamin D deficiency in India or other areas where it is common is a major factor which causes confusion in that setting. So always do vitamin D level also, even though you're not thinking of a vitamin D excess situation, because it may confound the picture. I think this case was really important to show in that regard. So what will happen if you have vitamin D deficiency? You will have a masking of hypercalcemia, which may have happened in this case, and hypercalciuria will also be masked. That's why in the algorithm we said repeat after a course of vitamin D. Second, if you have something like thiazide diuretic, lithium use, or low intake of calcium, again, you can have a false hypocalciuria. It does not mean that this is benign hypercalcemia. It's actually still hyperparathyroidism. So these things you have to look into when you are evaluating in that regards. Now, this is one of the most common referrals you will get from an orthopedic person or a nephrologist, that PTH is high. Now, you have to decide whether it is really a primary versus secondary hyperparathyroidism. On the face of it, it is simple. If your calcium is high, it is primary. Your calcium is low, it is secondary. But usually, calcium will be normal. So what do you do and how do you differentiate between the two? So if your calcium is high, it is primary. Of course, there's no confusion. If PTH is below 100, this is more likely to be primary, with one exception of parathyroid carcinoma, where it may be thousands also. Then urinary calcium will of course be high if it is a parathyroid problem. Vitamin D levels you have to be always looked into, and bone disease. So you will have chronic disease like nephrocalcinosis, you will have fractures, you will have metabolic bone disease. It means it's a long-standing thing. On the other hand, if you have hypocalcemia, very high PTH level, low urinary calcium, again very important. If you have low vitamin D, urinary calcium will be low, which happened in this case also, and vitamin D will be low, you will be able to differentiate. So I think this is very important to differentiate primary from secondary in that perspective. Now, 10-year-old boy, for routine workup, calcium is slightly high, phosphorus is low. Now, what we do here, you look at PTH. PTH is 90. Now, next step is fractional excretion of calcium is 1.2%. So what will you do, Manoj, in this case? This child has mildish hypercalcemia, has got PTH which is more than 20, looks like hyperparathyroidism, but there is hypocalciuria, or it's in the normal range. So do you think this is calcium sensing receptor defect?
No, it can be, we have to, according to approach, we have to do 25.
So vitamin D level was 12. So what will you do now? You give a trial. So with trial, what was found was that his urinary calcium became 3. So what is the diagnosis now?
Vitamin D.
Hyperparathyroidism. Vitamin D was masking his hypercalciuria. So was masking, but this is actually primary hyperparathyroidism. So always do vitamin D when you're doing PTH in that setting. And look at 3 major things: phosphorus, PTH, and urinary calcium. Your diagnosis is done. High normal phosphorus, PTH independent, PTH more than 20, PTH dependent, and urinary calcium low, it is a calcium sensing receptor defect. This will give you a diagnosis. So consider hypercalcemia in anybody who has failure to thrive, polyuria, constipation, hypertension. PTH, 25 OHD are key. I will also add phosphorus as well as urinary calcium in the setting, which will help you out. And initial management in many cases is hydration diuretics. We considered cinacalcet in the setting of somebody who had malignancy. We considered bisphosphonate in the setting of immobilization, and of course steroids in somebody who has an increased 1-alpha hydroxylase action in that point.